December 26, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. At 16:45 hours, Colonel Creighton Abrams's command car crosses the Assinois Gap into the 101st Airborne's perimeter, and the siege of Bastogne is officially over. Colonel Abrams has just punched a 50-meter corridor through the German encirclement at a cost of 36 killed and 157 wounded in the 4th Armored's 6-day drive from Arlon. And the men of the 101st Airborne are about to discover that the relief they have been waiting 10 days for is not the end of the battle, it is the beginning of the hardest part. The corridor is 50 meters wide. That is the measurement of the gap that the 37th Tank Battalion and the 53rd Armored Infantry Battalion of Combat Command R have torn through the German 5th Parachute Division's blocking position south of Bastogne at Assinois at 16:45 hours on December 26, 1944. Torn it in the specific and costly way of the combined arms assault that Abrams has been building toward since December 23, when the relief drive began from Arlon. 50 meters, the width of a road, the span of a rural Belgian farmyard, the distance between a 2-story Belgian house and the barn across the yard, the distance a fit soldier can sprint in 7 seconds, the distance that separates 18,000 American soldiers from the rest of the Allied army. Through this corridor, in the gathering darkness of the Belgian winter evening whose December sunset comes before 1700 hours, and plunges the fighting ground into the blackness that the snow's reflection partially alleviates, the first supply trucks are moving. 40 trucks, guided by soldiers of the 37th Tank Battalion, whose presence at the Assinois Gap has been the corridor's security for the past 40 minutes. The drivers have been told what they are carrying: blood plasma, whose supply inside the Bastogne perimeter was exhausted 2 days ago; artillery shells, whose daily allocation has been rationed at levels so low that the 101st Airborne's artillery has been firing on emergency priority only; surgical supplies, food, everything that the 101st Airborne's 18,000 defenders have been rationing or going without since the German encirclement completed on December 21st. The corridor is everything the garrison has been fighting for. It is also a corridor that the German command is already preparing to close. The ACS Panzer Corps under SS Obergruppenführer Wilhelm Bittrich is repositioning. The 1st SS Panzer Division's elements that have been pressing the northern shoulder of the Bastogne perimeter are reorienting. The 26th Volksgrenadier Division, whose assault on the eastern sector of the 101st's defense has been the most sustained pressure of the 10-day siege, has not stopped fighting simply because a 50-meter corridor has opened in the south. The battle for Bastogne does not end on December 26, 1944. The history that ends there is the history of the siege. The battle enters its most dangerous phase. The 10 days before Abrams's breakthrough are the 10 days that the popular history of the Battle of the Bulge has preserved most completely. The drama of the encirclement, the German surrender demand, and McAuliffe's nuts, the C-47 supply drops when the weather finally cleared on December 23rd, the specific and documented tenacity of the 101st Airborne's defense of a circular perimeter in the Belgian Ardennes winter. What the popular history has preserved less completely is what happened in the 48 hours after the corridor opened, the specific and costly and professionally demanding combat of December 26 and 27 and into December 28 that determined whether the corridor remained open long enough to be meaningful and whether the Bastogne position could be converted from the defended pocket, whose survival had consumed the Third Corps' relief drive for 6 days, into the operational base, whose possession the Allied command required for the subsequent counteroffensive. The 48-hour post-relief period is the period that the battle's outcome required to be won after the siege's end. Required, in the specific and operational sense that the corridor's survival for 48 hours was the prerequisite for the corridor's widening, and the corridor's widening was the prerequisite for Bastogne's conversion from the defended pocket to the operational base. The period that the German command's response to the corridor's opening made into the most demanding operational challenge that the combined forces of the 4th Armored Division and the 101st Airborne faced in the entire Ardennes campaign more demanding in some respects than the siege itself, because the siege's defenders had the perimeter's depth, and the town's buildings, and the Belgian population's cellars, and the circular defense's mutual support, while the corridor's defenders had 50 meters of road in the Belgian dark, and the knowledge that everything the garrison needed was moving through those 50 meters. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe commands the 101st Airborne Division in Bastogne, commands it from the Belgian barracks building on the town's southeastern edge that the Germans have been shelling daily, and that the division has been using as the command post since the German encirclement completed on December 21st. The basement has been the division command post. The upper floors have been the division aid station. The specific and documented physical condition of the barracks on December 26 reflects 10 days of siege, the wounded filling every available space in the upper floors, the ammunition dump reduced to the critical counts that the artillery officers have been reporting in the daily summaries that McAuliffe has been transmitting to 3rd Corps by radio since the encirclement began. The division's combat strength reduced from the 11,840 soldiers who were in Bastogne when the German encirclement completed on December 21, to the approximately 11,200 who are present on December 26, after 10 days of the most sustained defensive combat that any American airborne division has conducted in the European theater. McAuliffe knows the relief has come, knows it from the radio communication that Abrams's command car transmitted to the 101st Airborne's command post at 1645, as the 37th Tank Battalion's lead tanks crossed into the 326th Airborne Engineer Battalion's perimeter at Assenoir. He also knows what the corridor's 50-meter width means for his division's situation and what it does not mean. The encirclement has been punctured, but not broken. The German forces that have been pressing the perimeter from the north, the east, and the west have not withdrawn and are not going to withdraw simply because a supply route has opened in the south, and the 48 hours after Abrams's breakthrough will determine whether Bastogne becomes the Allied operational base that the 3 Corps' relief drive was designed to create, or returns to the isolated pocket it has been since December 21st. Colonel Creighton Abrams, in December 1944, is the 4th Armored Division's most effective battalion commander, a distinction in a division whose competition for that designation is the competition among the most effective armored battalion commanders in the Third Army, which is the competition among the most effective armored battalion commanders in the American Army in Europe. The commander of the 37th Tank Battalion, whose operational record in the Lorraine campaign from August through October, and the Saar fighting from November through December, and the 6-day relief drive from Arlon, has built the professional reputation that the Bastogne breakthrough has now confirmed as the decisive tactical action of the entire 3rd Corps relief operation. He is 30 years old, the youngest regimental-level commander in the 3rd Corps, and the most effective armored battalion commander in the most effective armored division in the American Army's most aggressive army. His reputation has been building since the Lorraine campaign, when the 37th Tank Battalion's performance at Aricourt, the largest tank battle on the Western Front before the Ardennes, where the 37th Shermans defeated the German 113th Panzer Brigade's counterattack on September 18th, established Abrams as the commander who makes the combined arms. Assault work under the specific and demanding conditions of the opposed meeting engagement established him in the eyes of Patton, who watched the Aricourt fighting from the 3rd Army headquarters and whose assessment of Abrams as the best tank battalion commander in the army produced the assignment to lead the Bastogne relief drive's final assault. He has been fighting his tanks through the Belgian winter since December 22, when the relief drive began from Arlon in Luxembourg, fighting through the 5th Parachute Division's blocking positions in the specific and costly way of the Armored Infantry Team, whose combined arms proficiency has been the 3rd Corps' most effective offensive instrument since the relief drive's opening. When his command car crosses the Assenoir corridor into Bastogne at 16:45 hours on December 26, and he shakes hands with the 326th Airborne Engineer Battalion soldiers who are holding the corridor's northern end, the symbolic moment is the moment that the history records and the photograph captures: the relief's arrival, the siege's end, the human connection between the force that held and the force that came. What Abrams does in the next 48 hours, the tactical decisions he makes to hold the corridor open against the German counterattacks, whose organization the 5th Parachute's surviving regimental structure has been permitting since the Assiniboia breakthrough, the positioning of his Shermans in the darkness to cover the supply convoy's approach, the commitment of his armored infantry to the frozen foxholes, whose maintenance is the corridor's physical reality, is the moment that the battle records. The question, at 16:45 on December 26, 1944, is whether a 50-meter corridor can be held through the night, widened in the morning, and supplied fast enough to convert the Bastogne pocket into the Allied operational base before the German command closes the gap. The German command has the forces to try. The 5th Parachute Division is not destroyed. It is cut, its blocking position penetrated, but its regimental structure is intact, and its response to the Assiniboia breakthrough is already being organized by the division commander, who understands that every hour the corridor remains at 50 meters is an hour in which the 4th Armored and the 101st Airborne can widen it. The IMIS's Panzer Corps has the 1st SS Panzer Division and the 12th SS Panzer Division available for the effort to restore the German advantage. The German answer to Abrams's breakthrough is already being written in the operations orders that Army Group B is issuing on the night of December 26. The orders that will produce the 14th Parachute Regiment's midnight counterattack at Assiniboia, the 1st SS Panzer Division's morning assault at Flamiège, and the artillery interdiction effort against the supply convoy route through the Assiniboia Gap. December 26, 1700 to 2400. The corridor is held by a force that has just fought its way through the German blocking position, and whose offensive momentum is the same momentum that has been producing the 5th Parachute's tactical reverses for 3 days. Abrams positions his 37th Tank Battalion's Shermans at the Assiniboia Gap, pointing south at the German positions from which the counterattack will come, while the 53rd Armored Infantry Battalion's soldiers dig in along the corridor's edges in the Belgian December mud and the freezing rain that has been producing the specific and grinding physical misery of the soldiers who have been fighting in the Ardennes since December 16. The temperature is below freezing, has been below freezing since December 19, and will not rise above freezing until January. The ground is frozen under the mud's surface layer, frozen to the depth that makes the infantryman's shovel ring against stone-hard earth that resists the digging whose completion the soldier's survival requires. The 53rd Armored Infantry's soldiers dig with the specific and determined effort of soldiers who understand that a shallow fighting position in this ground is the difference between surviving the German counterattack that is coming before midnight and not surviving it. The first supply convoy, 40 trucks loaded with the 101st Airborne's most critical needs, the loads having been prepared by the Third Corps' Quartermaster Section since December 23, in anticipation of the corridor's opening, enters the corridor at 17:30 hours, guided by the 37th Tank Battalion's guides, whose flashlights in the Belgian darkness mark the road that the trucks must follow through the 50-meter gap. The trucks move in single file at 5-meter intervals. On either side of the road, the German positions that have not been cleared from the corridor's flanks are close enough for the drivers to hear, in the intervals between the truck's engines, the sounds of the 5th Parachute Division's infantry moving in the darkness. The drivers know what they are driving through. They drive through it anyway, drive through the 50-meter gap in the darkness with the German positions on both sides, and the sound of the 14th Parachute Regiment's infantry in the fields, and the knowledge that the corridor's survival depends on the supply reaching the garrison, and the garrison holding the corridor's northern end long enough for the supply to matter. December 27, 2001. The German response to the corridor's opening arrives before midnight on December 26 and continues through the morning of December 27th in the specific and professionally executed form of the local counterattack that the German command's response to the Assiniboia breakthrough has produced with the speed of the defensive tactical adjustment, the speed of the professional military organization that identifies a threat, allocates the available reserve, and attacks before the threat can consolidate. The 5th Parachute Division's response to the Abrams breakthrough is the response of a formation that has been fighting the Third Corps' relief drive for 6 days, and that understands, from 6 days of experience with the 4th Armored Division's operational style, that the time between the breakthrough and the exploitation is the time when the counterattack has its maximum chance of success. The 5th Parachute Division's 14th Parachute Regiment, whose sector the Abrams breakthrough has cut, and whose blocking position at Assenoir, the 37th Tank Battalion, and the 53rd Armored Infantry have destroyed in the December 26 assault, mounts the counterattack against the corridor's southern end in the darkness of December 26 through 27, with the specific and professional response of an elite German formation that has absorbed a tactical defeat and is attempting to restore the defensive line whose breach the corridor represents. Soldiers of the German parachute infantry, moving through the snow in the darkness, approaching the Assenoir perimeter's edge in the specific and visceral way of the night infantry assault, whose conduct the December night makes both possible and dangerous. The sounds of boots crunching in the frozen snow, whose noise the attacking force cannot suppress. The first shots from the 53rd Armored Infantry's picket line, whose alert the boot sounds have triggered. The flares that the defenders fire to illuminate the killing ground, and that turn the Belgian darkness into the momentary daylight, whose stark white light reveals the attacking infantry in the snowfields south of Assenoir. Abrams commits his reserve tanks to the counterattack's repulse. The 15th Tank Battalion of Combat Command B, under Lieutenant Colonel George Jaques, which has been fighting a parallel route to the east of Abrams's axis through the Belgian Ardennes since December 22nd, reaches the corridor from the east in the morning of December 27th and widens the initial gap from 50 meters to approximately 200 meters in the fighting that the morning of December 27th documents in the after-action reports of both the 4th Armored Division and the 101st Airborne's, 301st 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 Airborne's, 301st. The 327th soldiers are holding the corridor's northern end, are holding the same farmhouses and the same frozen fields where they have been fighting since December 21. And the arrival of the 15th Tank Battalion's Shermans to their south gives them the armored support whose absence has made the corridor's northern end the most exposed position in the 101st Airborne's perimeter. By 1200 hours on December 27th, the corridor is 200 meters wide. It is still not enough, not wide enough for the two-way traffic that resupply and reinforcement require, not wide enough to provide the depth that the German artillery's fire along the corridor can interdict without affecting the supply convoys, not wide enough to give the corridor's defenders the room that the defensive depth requires for the sustained holding operation that the widening will take. The near failure of the post-relief operation arrives in the specific and operationally significant form of the German 1st SS Panzer Division's attack against the western shoulder of the Bastogne perimeter on December 27, 1944. An attack that the German command has been organizing since December 25, when it became clear that the 5th Parachute Division's blocking position at Assenoir was under the pressure that the 3-Corps relief drive was generating. The 1st SS Panzer Division's commitment to the western perimeter attack represents the German Army Group B's operational response to the corridor's opening. If the southern corridor cannot be closed before it widens sufficiently to resupply and reinforce the Bastogne garrison, the German response is to press the western perimeter with the armored and infantry force that makes the Bastogne position untenable from a different direction. The 1st SS Panzer Division's attack on December 27th strikes the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment's sector on the western perimeter at 0830 hours, striking at the exact moment when the 327th soldiers have been in continuous contact for 6 days, and whose rest has been the rest of the soldier who sleeps in frozen foxholes between the defensive positions that the German night attacks require him to man. The attack hits with the specific and documented force of 2 SS Panzergrenadier battalions, whose combat power the SS Panzergrenadier's specific military quality makes formidable even in the diminished state of the 1st SS Panzer Division after 2 weeks of the Ardennes campaign. Supported by tank elements, whose presence on the Bastogne perimeter, the 101st Airborne's G2 section under Lieutenant Colonel Paul Danahy had been warning McAuliffe about for 3 days. The attack makes initial progress, whose documentation in the 1st SS Panzer Division's after-action report and the 327th Glider Infantry's after-action report provides the two-sided picture of the December 27th assault's opening hours. The 327th 3rd Battalion, under Lieutenant Colonel Ray Allen, is pushed back 400 meters in the first 2 hours of the assault, losing the village of Flamierge in the specific and documented tactical reversal of the defending battalion that has been in continuous contact since December 19, and whose combat effectiveness has been reduced by 10 days of defensive fighting in the Belgian December. The German armor that follows the infantry's penetration into Flamierge moves forward into the gap, and McAuliffe's G2 section reports the penetration's depth at 0930 with the specific and alarming assessment that the western perimeter's integrity is at immediate risk. McAuliffe commits his reserve, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment's 3rd Battalion under Lieutenant Colonel John Stopka, which has been holding a rest area since December 24th, after the most intense fighting of the 506th's Bastogne defense on December 22 and 23, to the counterattack that stops the SS advance and begins the recovery of the lost ground. The fighting is close and specifically costly. The village of Flamierge changes hands twice in 8 hours. The fighting in the Belgian farmhouses whose stone walls provide the cover that the attackers and the defenders are both using in the alternating assault and counter-assault that the village fighting produces, and the frozen fields that constitute the western perimeter's tactical ground between the farmhouses producing the specific and human cost of the close-range infantry battle in the conditions of the Belgian December. Temperatures below 0 Fahrenheit, visibility reduced by the snow and the smoke of the burning farmhouses, the mud beneath the snow frozen to the depth that makes the wounded man who falls in the open field unable to dig himself into the earth that would protect him from the artillery fire that continues through the fighting. By 1800 hours on December 27th, the 327th Glider Infantry's 3rd Battalion has recovered Flamierge, and the western perimeter is restored to the December 26th line. The SS attack has failed to exploit the corridor's opening in the specific and operational way that the German command's planning had projected as the available response to the Abrams breakthrough. But the 101st Airborne has lost 31 killed and 142 wounded in the December 27th fighting alone. In a single day's combat, whose cost approaches the worst single-day losses of the 10-day siege. And the division's combat strength is declining, at a rate that the corridor's resupply and the first reinforcements the corridor has permitted cannot yet offset. The 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment under Colonel Howard Johnson, whose December 27 strength is 40% below its December 17 strength after 10 days of defensive combat, reports to McAuliffe's headquarters at 1900 hours that its eastern perimeter companies are at 60% of their authorized rifle strength, and that the regimental command post has received direct fire from German armor 3 times in the preceding 24 hours. December 28, 2400. The 48-hour period after the relief closes with the specific and consequential operational decision that the 3rd Corps commander, General John Milliken, and the 4th Armored Division commander, Major General Hugh Gaffey, make in the pre-dawn planning conference of December 28, that both men attend at the 4th Armored's forward command post south of Assenois. The attack to widen the corridor from the 200-meter gap that the December 27 fighting has established to the kilometer-wide road network that Bastogne's operational use as a supply base and a counter-offensive launch point requires. The decision is made at 0300 hours in the specific and focused way of the combat conference that produces the operational order in the time available between the decision and the dawn. The attack order goes to Combat Command A at 0330. By 0400, Colonel Blanchard is briefing his battalion commanders in the farmhouse south of Assenoir on the December 28th attack that will be the 48-hour period's concluding action. Briefing by flashlight in the compressed format of the commander, who has 90 minutes between the order and the start line, and whose battalion commanders need to brief their company commanders in that same 90 minutes. The 4th Armored's Combat Command A under Colonel Wendell Blanchard attacks north from Assenoir toward the high ground east of the corridor that the German 5th Parachute Division's remaining elements have been using to fire directly into the supply convoys, moving through the gap. The 120mm mortars and the 88mm guns, whose positions on the ridgeline east of the Assenoir Road have been able to engage the supply convoys at ranges that the corridor's 50-meter and then 200-meter width has kept within the German weapons' effective range. The attack is the attack of an armored force that has been fighting continuously since December 22 and whose mechanical condition reflects 6 days of Belgian winter combat. The Belgian December's specific and operational cost on the Sherman tank's running gear and its transmission and its fuel lines when the temperatures dropped to levels the M4's designers had not specified as the operating baseline. The 4th Armored's tank strength on December 28 is 40 operational Shermans out of the 86 that began the relief drive from Arlon on December 22, a reduction of more than 50% in 6 days' operations. The remainder, deadlined by mechanical failure, combat damage, and the specific and operational cost of continuous armored operations in freezing temperatures on roads that the tracked vehicle's passage has converted to ice and rubble. The 40 Shermans attack with the 51st Armored Infantry Battalion, mounted on the tank's rear decks and running alongside in the specific and tactically demanding way of the armored infantry attack in close terrain, and with the 35th Infantry Division's 137th Infantry Regiment under Colonel William Bell, which has been moved up to the Assenoir area by the 3 Corps, in the specific and documented operational decision that the corridor's security requires more infantry than the 4th Armored's 2 surviving armored infantry battalions can provide for both the corridor's southern defense and the Combat Command A attack north. By nightfall on December 28, the corridor is 1 kilometer wide, wider by a factor of 20 than the 50-meter gap that Abrams punched through at 16:45 on December 26th. The supply convoys are moving in both lanes of the Assenoir Road, the northbound lane carrying the ammunition and the medical supplies and the food and the replacement personnel, the southbound lane carrying the wounded whose evacuation has been impossible since December 21 and who are now being moved to the field hospitals south of the corridor in the vehicles that brought the supplies in. The German artillery that has been targeting the convoys has been pushed back beyond effective range by the Combat Command A attack of December 28. The Bastogne perimeter has been resupplied with the specific and documented loads of 40 truckloads of ammunition, 15 truckloads of medical supplies and blood plasma, 10 truckloads of food, and the 4th Armored Division's forward maintenance teams, whose arrival in Bastogne on December 27th has begun the repair of the 101st Airborne's 105mm howitzers and the half-tracks and the tank destroyers, whose maintenance has been deferred for 10 days. The legacy of the 48 hours after Patton's relief column broke through at Bastogne is the legacy of the most demanding and the most consequential post-relief period in the American Army's Ardennes campaign. The 48-hour period whose management by the 4th Armored Division and the 101st Airborne determined whether the relief was a military success or an operational gesture. The corridor that was 50 meters wide on December 26 was 200 meters wide on December 27 after the 15th Tank Battalion's arrival, 1 kilometer wide on December 28 after Combat Command A's attack north, and 3 kilometers wide on December 30 when the 87th Infantry Division's arrival to the south of Bastogne gave the 3 Corps the infantry mass to hold the corridor's flanks, while the 4th Armored pushed north to link up with the 35th Infantry Division driving south along the Neufchâteau Road. The geometry of the corridor's widening, from the 50-meter gap of Abrams's breakthrough to the 3-kilometer road network of December 30, is the geometry of the 48-hour post-relief period's tactical achievement, the achievement that converted the symbolic relief of December 26 into the operational reality of December 30. The German Army Group B's attempts to close the corridor, the 5th Parachute Division's 14th Parachute Regiment's local counterattacks at Assenois in the darkness of December 26 to 27, the 1st SS Panzer Division's western perimeter assault of December 27 that made initial progress at Flamierge before the 506th PIR's counterattack stopped it. The artillery interdiction of the supply route from the ridgeline positions east of the corridor that Combat Command A's December 28 attack pushed beyond effective range were defeated in detail by the combined effort of the 4th Armored Division's armored force and the 101st Airborne Division's infantry in the specific and documented fighting of December 26, 27, and 28 that the regimental and battalion after-action reports preserve as the operational record of the most critical 48 hours in the Bastogne battle's history. The 101st Airborne Division's casualties for the entire Bastogne operation, from December 17th when the division arrived in the town, through January 3, 1945, when it was relieved by the 11th Armored Division, were approximately 2,000 killed, wounded and missing, with the majority of the wounded being treated in the Bastogne aid stations whose pharmaceutical supplies were exhausted by December 24th and whose surgeons were operating in the Belgian barracks basement by lamplight. The 4th Armored Division's casualties in the relief drive from December 22 to December 30 were approximately 1,000 killed and wounded, concentrated in the 6 days of the relief drive through the 5th Parachute Division's blocking positions and the corridor fighting that the December 27th and 28 operations produced. These are the arithmetic of the battle, whose outcome the 48-hour post-relief period secured in the most direct and costly possible way. Secured in the frozen foxholes at Assenois and the burning farmhouses at Flamierge and the ridgeline positions east of the corridor where Combat Command A's Shermans pushed the German artillery back beyond range on December 28. Numbers that represent the specific and human cost of the days that the popular history tends to omit from the Bastogne story, because the story's dramatic peak is the relief's arrival rather than the relief's consolidation. The broader strategic consequence of the Bastogne perimeter's survival and the corridor's establishment, from the 50-meter gap of December 26 to the kilometer-wide road network of December 28, to the 3-kilometer-wide secured corridor of December 30, was the consequence that the German Army Group B's planning had been designed to prevent. Bastogne became the operational base from which the Third Army's counter-offensive against the Ardennes salient's southern shoulder was conducted in the first 3 weeks of January 1945. The base whose road network connected the Allied supply system to the attack axes that drove north into the Ardennes salient, and whose possession denied the German advance the logistical coherence that the Bastogne crossroads would have provided to the German forces if von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army had captured the town in December. What McAuliffe and Abrams and the soldiers of the 101st Airborne and the 4th Armored secured in the 48 hours after the relief was not merely the survival of a besieged garrison, not merely the continuation of the 101st Airborne's presence inside a Belgian town, whose strategic significance the German offensive had made the central fact of the Ardennes campaign's southern sector since December 21st. They secured the operational base that the Third Army's counter-offensive required, in the most direct and most costly possible way, against an opponent who understood precisely what Bastogne meant, and who was willing to commit the 1st SS Panzer Division and the remnants of the 5th Parachute Division, and the German artillery, and the Belgian winter, to take it back, even after the siege had been broken. That is what the 48 hours of silence, the silence that is not silence, that is the sound of the 14th Parachute Regiment's infantry, moving through the Belgian snow at midnight, and the sound of the 53rd Armored Infantry soldiers firing from their frozen foxholes, and the sound of the 1st SS Panzer's armor engines in the Flamierge darkness, and the sound of the 506th PIR's 3rd Battalion counterattacking. Through the morning frost and the sound of Colonel Blanchard's 40 Shermans advancing north on December 28, with the specific and grinding sound of armor in winter terrain, means in the operational record of the Battle of the Bulge, the siege ended, but the battle did not, and the men who held the corridor open in those 48 hours are the men who decided which way the Ardennes campaign ended.